député de Laurier-Sainte-Marie à
Member of Parliament for Essex.
Member of Parliament for North Island Powell River.
Deputy Stewart, the Member of Parliament for Burnaby South.
And Jenny Todd is down here somewhere.
Jagmeet.
I was hoping for a bit of a better turnout, but I guess this will do. No, but seriously, all these amazing events that we've hosted are a result of an incredible team that's done so much work promoting. So you've seen some of our MP team up here on stage, and Jenny that's right beside the stage. And there's an incredible number of volunteers that have helped out. You saw our MC right here, who's also used to be a page. We have some of our team here. Are there any other volunteers that can get you to come up to the stage for a quick sec? Other volunteers, just squeeze on up here. Any other volunteers, just squeeze on up here. Just for a quick sec. Oh yeah, we got my good friend here. And what I'll ask you to do, what I'm going to ask you all to do, if you can humor me, no campaign, no leadership candidate, no leader is anything without an incredible team of volunteers, people who work so hard, put in so much of their time. So can you do me a favor, please, and give them all a loud round of applause? So we know that Ottawa is strong NDP country. So we should have anticipated this crowd and had a microphone, so I apologize. I hope my voice is carrying to the back. Okay, yeah, thumbs up, nice, okay, love it. So I'm hoping to tell you a bit about why I care, some of the policies that really motivate me, but I also will leave some time for questions. I hope that makes sense, yeah?
Yep.
All right, all right. So let me start with one of the things that has come up a lot is the slogan, Love and Courage. So I can tell you when we first came up with this slogan, we were working on it as a team. And we sat together, we talked about different things, and they asked, the team asked me about what mattered to me and why I care. And we came up with this slogan, and then we ran it by some folks that were really experienced in politics. And they said to us, you can't talk about love in politics, that doesn't work. This slogan's not gonna work at all. No one's going to like it. It's not going to have any appeal. It's not going to catch on. I'd like to believe it caught on a bit. But more importantly, what it means to me is, first element, love. It takes an act of love, I believe, to realize that we're all in this together, to realize that we're connected, that there's so much that we share in common, and to realize that it takes an act of love. And it takes an act of courage to demand better, and to dream bigger so we can fight for a better and more just world. So I really believe it's about love and courage. I hope you do too. Why I care. Just to give you a bit of a sense of where I come from when I talk about the issues I talk about, why I care. For me, I grew up, as you can imagine, with brown skin, long hair, and a funny sounding name. I grew up, and kids can be sometimes not so friendly when you stand out. I actually was hanging out in Vancouver Island, and on Duncan, just a random story that sticks out, I met an incredible woman that does so much work for progressive causes, and she told me how she immigrated from England to Vancouver Island, to Duncan, and that kids would bully her, literally bully her because of her accent. And I'm kind of astounded because given Harry Potter's amazing success and all sorts of other reasons, the English accent is kind of cool now, right? But when she grew up, she was bullied over her accent. So bullying and being made fun of is not something uncommon, happens all too often. But for me, what happened as a result of it, it made me very sensitive to unfairness going on around me. When I experienced that unfairness in my life, it made me notice it and be more sensitive to it in the lives of others, the lives of people around me. And so one of the things that really stood out in my mind was when I got older and I was going to university. I just assumed that I would go to university. My parents did. They had struggled and had went through some difficulties economically, but they had eventually found their way to getting to university. So for me, that was something I assumed. But there was incredible people around me, friends. I asked them what they were up to, what they were going to do, and many of them said that they would have to find a job and that school wasn't an option. When I said, one of my friends in particular, who was an incredible artist and he used to draw and win all these awards for his illustrated books and competitions, I asked him about going to art school. And he literally looked at me like I was from another planet. And it's like, art school? I can't afford to go to art school. I gotta find a job. I gotta find a way to earn some money. I can't afford the tuition for that. And it struck me as incredibly unfair that there's passionate, talented people that can't pursue their dreams because of these barriers. And they're real barriers. And on a personal note, when I was completing my last years of university and doing my science degree, my father became pretty ill. And he was so ill that he couldn't continue to work. And my mother couldn't work either. My dad needed support. So I was the eldest of 3 siblings. And I felt the responsibility to start earning. So I became the sole income earner of my family in my 20s. And as a result, I had to make decisions about what I could pursue in terms of education. So I tried to look at the different fields that were available. And one of my professors suggested law. And I looked at law tuitions and I thought, okay, I can wrap my head around it. I went to Osgoode Hall Law School and the tuition was $8,000 a year. And $8,000 a year is expensive, but it's something that I could see myself around. I could find a student line of credit and some other grants and some of the savings that we had, and I could do it. And I ended up graduating and then supporting the family, paying for the roof over our heads and the bills, and I got a bit of a glimpse of what it's like to feel that pressure of taking care of a family on one income. But today, guess how much that tuition is? And I'm not that old, so it wasn't that long ago. So it was $8,000 when I went there. Guess how much the tuition is right now?
Double.
So double is 16, 27, 25, it's 30. It's over $30,000 a year.
Wow.
Over $30,000 a year. That means that just tuition alone is $90,000. I can tell you that in a situation where I was the eldest of 3 siblings and I needed to support my brother and sister and my mom and dad, that it would not be even close to feasible for me to attain my law degree if it was $30,000 back then. And if I wouldn't have gone to law school, I probably would never have been in a position to run, given life circumstances, to run as an MPP, as an MP. I wouldn't be standing before you right now, potentially the next leader of the NDP. And I think about all the incredibly talented, passionate people that can't pursue their dreams, not because they don't want to, not because they're not capable, but because there's barriers preventing them from doing so. And that strikes me as incredibly unfair. And that's why one of the policies I strongly believe, and Nikki was the first to talk about it, and I think it's a powerful policy, at the federal level, between $10 billion to $20 billion investments could mean that we could get rid of tuition fees and make tuition free. It's something that we could actually achieve, and I call it an investment because think about what that investment would do, how it would build up our society. That investment would pay on that return incredibly. We would do so much better as a society if we had that barrier teared down. But not just tuition fees. We know that there also needs to be supports in terms of grants for families or people that can't afford the other costs associated with education, books and living costs. We need to have grants and supports for those as well. And we know that people who are graduating, students that are graduating with crushing debt, on top of that debt, the government is making a profit off of their debt by charging interest on that. That's unacceptable. What I would like to see as leader and as Prime Minister, that we waive any interest on debt, on student debt. The students that was a little bit about the unfairness that I faced and the unfairness that I started to become sensitive about. The second thing that was really fundamental and why I care is something my mom taught me, and some of you might have heard the story, I've shared it a couple of times now, but my mom talked to me about, actually, how many people have heard about this? Oh no. That's me. I like it. It's a good story, right?
Tell again.
I'll tell again, it's only a couple of people heard it. Anyways, so my mom always told me, as a kid, she always kind of ingrained this idea that we're all one, that we're all connected. And initially, I mean, as a kid I didn't get it. And as I got older, I thought it sounded a bit new age and a bit hippie. But I was like, okay, and I kind of gave it some time. And eventually, I really believe this is something that's fundamental to me, that we are all truly connected, that we have differences that we need to celebrate, But at the core of it, we have a shared humanity. We're connected based on where we live, the communities we live in, the cities we live in, the country we live in, the planet that we live on. We are all connected. So this idea that we're all one really motivates me. My mom always taught me that if people around us are suffering, we're suffering. And if we lift people around us, we all rise. I truly believe that's a motivational thing for me. So that's a bit of why I care, and some of the issues that are important to me. I'll just touch on a couple of them and leave you some time so you can ask me questions. But I talked about 4 pillars that are fundamental to me, fundamental things we need to tackle. The first one that I talked about when I launched my campaign in May, and I continue to talk about, is inequality. Inequality is growing. We're in the first time right now in the history of Canada where future generations have less opportunity to live out their dreams than previous generations. It's the first time in our history. So we know that inequality is real, and specifically there's income inequality. Pay equity is still an ongoing issue that needs to be dealt with once and for all. It's offensive that in 2017, women are still only getting paid sometimes 70% of what men are getting paid. We need to end that once and for all and implement pay equity. The other massive area of inequality is the housing crisis. Right now, housing is not just something that people can't afford to buy, but people can't even afford to rent places. And it's not just, no, you're right. Like Ellen is like, you know that me and Ellen are on the same wavelength, Ellen and I. She finishes my sentences now. But yeah, people can't even afford to rent. And I thought this was an issue, a big city issue, Ottawa issue, maybe Toronto, Vancouver. I was on the island, I was in the South Shore of Nova Scotia. Across Canada, this is an issue. There's a housing crisis where people do not have a place to live. And there's 3 things I think we need to do. One, we need to actually invest in a national housing strategy. As a starting point, we need to build more units that are affordable. We need to invest in supporting existing affordable units. And secondly, cooperatives. They're a powerful way. Cooperative housing are a powerful way Cooperatives are a powerful way to make housing affordable, to make housing no longer a commodity. And the third thing is, in general, there's become a commodification of housing. It's being used like a financial instrument. It's being used to park money and as an investment, and that precludes people who want to use housing as a place to live and grow their families. Housing should be a fundamental right, and we need to return to that. That's a fundamental right. I love that I have my own cheering section right here. This is awesome. Thank you for the love. I appreciate it. I also talked about in my launch, and I continue to talk about the importance of reconciliation. It's fundamental if we want to live in a just society. A just society in Canada cannot exist until we have Indigenous justice. It's a fundamental thing. And a starting point, a basic starting point is the fact that our federal government talked about Indigenous justice and that the relationship with Indigenous people would be the most important relationship on one hand, and on the other hand, the same government has challenged and appealed for compliance orders from the Human Rights Tribunal, which stated that Indigenous children should receive equal funding. And it's not like Justin Trudeau said, oh, I missed that memo, I didn't catch that. He sent lawyers to say, no, they don't deserve it, which is shameful, which is unacceptable. It's something that New Democrats won't stand for. And as a starting point, a new democratic government would ensure that Indigenous children receive equal funding at a minimum. And reconciliation is far more than just that. We need to do far more. There's clean water issues. There's the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People that we need to implement. There's so much more we need to do. That's a starting point. And then I talked a lot about the importance of climate change and how we need to tackle climate change. And it's not acceptable for a government and a leader to talk about, like Trudeau, talking about climate change and then accepting the same targets as conservatives. That's not commitment to climate. That's not commitment to tackling climate change. As a starting point, we need to have better policies around actually achieving our Paris Accord. And that's why I put forward some bold initiatives. We need to talk about how Kinder Morgan and Energy East aren't in line. They aren't in line with our goals. They aren't in line with UNDRIP. They aren't in line with our goals as a society to end. They aren't in line with our goals to tackle the emissions and to reduce emissions. So that's a fundamental element we need to tackle, climate change. And finally, electoral reform. I was going to say, before you applaud, let's not just applaud at electoral reform. Because someone said the word electoral reform and left it at that. And then what did we get? Nothing. We got nothing. Because rien. Oui, c'est vrai. Oh, j'ai dû parler en français aussi. On a parlé des réformes électorales. C'est quelque chose de tellement important. Mais, quelle réforme? What type of reform? As New Democrats, we believe that your voice should be reflected in Ottawa. That your voice should be reflected in Parliament. And to do that, we believe in mixed member proportional representation. So your voice I have to give a shout out to Guy Caron. He led with this issue and put it forward in a very exhaustive policy on it. Did a great job. We released our policy as well, but I want to give a shout out to Guy. Let's give him a round of applause. I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Charlie on his incredible work on Indigenous issues. So let's give him a round of applause. So electoral reform, if we had mixed member proportional representation, we would truly see people's voices reflected in Parliament, and we would once and for all end the specter of a party, a political party, getting a majority of the power with a minority of the votes. We'd get rid of that once and for all. We'd get rid of vote splitting, that concern. We'd get rid of strategic voting. People could vote the way they want without any fear, without any concerns. That's what we do.